So, welcome everybody to our Aizu lens test. My name is Niels Keber. I'm a German cinematographer and I work at the Academy of Applied Sciences in Mainz. And this is Stefan Schuh, a very well-known German cinematographer, especially for his work in comedy. And we will refer to that later on. So, yeah, we had the privilege to test the new Aizu Prime Lenses, like was 2 weeks ago, I guess, right? Yeah, and we went to Cologne, although I already made out a perfect testing environment in Frankfurt, because Stefan just said, I don't like Frankfurt, Cologne is more beautiful, let's do it in Cologne. So you can judge for yourself by what we did, you're going to see later on. But first of all, I would like to go back a little bit in film history and basically show you the opposite of what we were trying to do with our lens test. As I found out, one of the first feature films that was shot on a digital HD video camera was Collateral with Tom Cruise. The film is from 2004. And I recently watched it for that reason. Then I did some research on the cameras that they used. And it was basically shot on the HDW900 HD camera from Sony, which later on, 2 years later, destroyed my childhood memories when they shot the Star Wars stuff with it. But on that shot, on Collateral, that what I would highly recommend all of you to rewatch maybe. I really like the use of that first kind of digital video camera, because it enabled a third character to play an important role. And that third character is the city of Los Angeles, where the story is located at. Most of the story plays in a taxi cab. And so you had the problem of that confined space. And what I found quite interesting is how the use of wide-angle lenses and the really large depth of field due to the small image sensor size. The camera has an image sensor of 2/3 of an inch, which equals a little bit like 9 by 6.57 millimeters. We will see that later on.
Which is about equivalent to a Super 16 millimeter film.
Yeah,
it's more or less the same size.
Yeah, and with that amount of depth of field, it enabled a lot more background to be visible. And so for that, you could always get a sense of the city and how they were moving in the city. My guesswork as well is that a lot of the shots are done in an available light situation, because they just couldn't or didn't want to light whole streets and relight them. So it has this certain roughness of the image that I pretty much like. And I would like to show you just a short clip, a short excerpt from that film.
Yeah. Mainly to see the contrast, because what we were trying to test actually is the image effect that a very shallow depth of field has. Because when we were introduced to the Aizu lenses, we quickly noticed that they have just a really good quality. So they don't vignette, they are very sharp, even wide open on an T-point 1.3, which is incredible. And they have a very nice organic look to them. They're not too excessively flaring. they are neutral and they have a nice focus fall off, which I like too. And they were designed for cinema and not just rehoused photographic lenses, which makes this more interesting to test. But we wanted to show you something special and not only the technical data of the lenses and their performance, because we can just say it's very good. So yeah, there are no flaws. There's nothing really interesting to show. So we wanted to see how they really perform on wide open on t-stop 1.3 on the largest sensor possible. We come to this later. And if this can be used for any dramatic effect on movies, because usually a shallow depth of field is not always advantage. Sometimes, as you can see here on the Collateral movie, it's also a really deep depth of field can be interesting. And so, yeah, we show you this for contrast to what's following up later. Only a very short clip from the movie.
So here you can already see everything on the motorway. All the background stuff is not very blurred. If you would shoot that on a Super 35, probably everything would be already blurred. And that, if you can just jump back those few seconds to the over-shoulder shot. So here you can see this is, everyone knows it, it's a wide-angle shot, close focus, let's say 1 or 2 meters, less than 2 meters, definitely.
Yeah, 1 meter maybe also.
Yeah, and you can still see all the background, all the lights from the motorway in the background and billboards and stuff. And the depth of field here is still immense. Something that is completely different from what we are about to show you right now, just to prove our starting point, or where we come from.
Also, what we didn't have now as an example is the shots in the taxi cab, because usually you would say if you're in a confined space, you try to get a shallow depth of field, because otherwise the walls are too much in focus. But they used a really deep depth of field to get the driver in focus and still have the guy on the back seat be at least a bit in focus, so you can see his acting. And that's something and even the city in the background also.
City, yeah.
So here it's interesting to really follow the completely opposite direction of what we were trying. And usually I'm not such a big fan of a really shallow depth of field myself, because I like to have in a close-up also every part of the face in focus, not only the eyes, but also the nose tip. But it can look really distracting if there are just parts of the face in focus. It can look nice on dramatic movies, but not on the comedies I shot. And what I really find distracting is when you have 4 people lined up in a row, and one is only slightly stepped back and he's already out of focus, and the other 3 are in focus, because the eye doesn't really feel the difference in size from just stepping back a little bit. And then I've got the feeling that everybody should have the same emphasis in focus. So usually I would shoot on a 2.8.5. And so we were just thinking about what could be the advantages of such a shallow depth of field. And what we were looking for in our test was rather wide shots, open shots with wide angle, where you still separate the actors from the background. And that's of course only possible with a very, very shallow depth of field. And then we wanted to find out if that brings you any advantage in storytelling. And this is pretty much something you can judge for yourself when you watch the test, if you like it, or maybe for what purposes it could be used in a movie. Maybe you shoot a whole movie with it, or only parts of it, or only the wide shots, because it's a completely different look from what you usually see. And I think it could be really useful, for example, for IMAX movies, to use such kind of lenses which are really wide open and cover such a large sensor. Because on an IMAX screen where you really sit close to a really large screen, it's sometimes not so comfortable to watch a close-up. So you should stick to wider shots and maybe not do such a fast editing. So the eye has something really to wander around in the image and look for things, and you can guide this search with the focus somehow if the focus is very shallow, even in wide shots. And that was what we were thinking about. And we have to be honest, the sensor I can show you is really big of the Fuji camera. We didn't shoot on the Eterna because it wasn't available. We shot on the GFX 100 Mark II, which has the same sensor, and the only difference is it doesn't really it doesn't export the full height of the sensor. So you can only record in 16:9 or 17:9 and not in 4:3, which we thought was not so important for the test right now, because especially to fill this screen, it's totally okay to film in 16:9. But for an IMAX movie, for example, it could be interesting to shoot more square than 16:9. And just to explain this, short clip here. So this, for example, this is the sensor on collateral, on which collateral was shot, at about the size, broadly the size of Super 16, which was for dozens of years television standard in Germany for shooting movies. And so now we here have the well-known Super 35 format, which is already bigger than Academy 35, and full format, which is a very common format now and used to be in the beginning of digital sensors not available or pure luxury because large sensors are expensive. Now every photographic camera offers full format. And for this full format size, this is where the Aizu Primes were constructed for in the beginning. But as you can see, they cover a little bit more than the full format size already. So there is some wiggle room. And when you look now at the Eterna sensor size, you see that the Aizu Primes are just covering not quite the sensor. You have some edges here that are not inside the official circle of image, the official image circle, but it's only the edges of the full sensor, and you might get some dark edges. You can see this on the test as well. But this is just also a matter of taste, because overshooting sensors with lenses with sensors is not so uncommon. But basically every 35mm cinematic lens that was constructed for Academy format, and that was most of the older vintage lenses, they are not really covering Super 35. So you get dark edges and vignetting there already too. That's for the Zeiss high speed, Zeiss standard, Cooke speed pancros or so. They were not meant to be shot on Super 35. They were meant to be shot on Academy. But also the old ingenieur zooms for 35mm. But personally, I've shot a lot of movies with 17-102 ingenieur zoom. And I really like the vignetting because it really helps to make the digital image look less digital, because you have some edges and some darkening. So what's happening here is just very slight vignetting with a little bit of dark corners. But that's a way of an artistic choice. And the good thing is we now, what we do with the lenses is we really test them to the extreme. So you can see the whole area the lenses are covering, which is also interesting. And just for reference, if you're interested in the size, because there's a lot of talk about medium format. Medium format photography, the lenses were even larger than whatever is on the market here. And only Alexa 35 or the new Blackmagic camera, they cover a larger array that's approaching 6x6 medium format, but only in width, not in height. So the GFX Eterna is still higher, the sensor is higher than the widescreen 65mm sensors that are available right now. So that makes it interesting for testing this, especially the Eterna. Okay.
Yeah, so I would like to show one thing more. So what Stefan was pointing out is that what we are doing here is some kind of an off-label use. We all know what we can do with off-label use. This is a shot from Poor Things. As far as I could find out, they used an Optex 4mm Super 16 lens to shoot that image here. So that is very common. So we wanted to see what is happening when we really go over the limitations. And I have to say that the lenses are performing quite well. We are going to see that in a minute. Today, as we do have the Eterna here on the stage, you can later on you can see what we are talking about with the little bit darkish corners here in that extreme focal length of 25 millimeters. I'm going to show you at the end of the presentation how it performs when we're overshooting what it is normally meant for.
And you can see the size of the lenses. They are rather compact for the T-stop they offer. And there's a lot of glass inside. Quality is good, coatings are perfect. And you really see that they were meant to be, they were constructed for cinema and not just like rehoused photographic lenses. That's a really big difference. And there are how many available? 12, I think, will be soon, 12 lenses.
Starts with an 18, which is not there yet, and ends with an 100, I think.
Yeah. So our widest lens was a 25, which is already really on this format, a really wide lens. And the thing is, when you watch it, try also a little bit to guess which focal length the shots were shot on. And try to judge if you like or don't like the autofocus background and in which occasions, because we have our favorite shots and our less favorite shots as well. Yeah. And most important about the test, it's not an acting test we did, because everybody who was on the shot is in the shot already also. And yeah, we just wanted to see how it looks in the picture, how the look of the picture turns. Good, so let's start with the test. Yeah, it's funny. Now that I've seen this film a dozen of times or more, I get used to the shallow depth of field, because it's really I think the smallest depth of field you can get right now at that price. Maybe only IMAX cameras would be possible to have a more shallow depth of field, but I don't know if there are many IMAX lenses available with a T.1, 1.3. So Marco, our friend Marco, has all the data usually. He's not here, fortunately. He said something you would need to do this.
Yeah, I know the numbers.
If 0.7? Or
yeah, but on a 13mm lens, you would need to achieve a 0.7 f-stop.
Yeah.
So something that would quite be relatively hard to construct, to say. So. Yeah, some facts. It's just shot on 800 ASA, so it's
all the night stuff too.
The night shots as well, which is pretty cool in my opinion. What the camera can do. So f-stop, t-stop, of course helps. But do you have any guesswork? Any frames that you kept in mind, and you have an idea about the focal lengths that we shot it with? Or any questions? First impressions for that now?
Before we fill you with prejudices for ourselves.
Something about 25 and 50 for close-ups.
Yeah, so that's pretty close.
So we started with the 25 that is on the camera right now as well.
That was the pan.
That was the pan, the first pan, and you can. We are going to watch it with the technical data in the frame right now. And then comment a little bit on it. So that was already, for me, that is already quite impressive that you have this separation here within a wide-angle lens.
And really wide shots.
Really wide shots, yeah.
So now we will take a closer look at the shots with the technical data.
Stefan likes the music, so...
Just a little bit.
In a little bit. So you get this nice separation from the background here, and already the guy with the ball in the background, in the middle ground, is separated from the two ladies in the front.
Yeah, so here the 75 is approximately the standard lens, a little bit tighter than the standard lens would be on this format. I guess it would be 65 or something. With our 6x6 medium format, it's 80, I guess, already. So it's in between. So it's not a really telephoto lens, the 75 on this format.
What I would like to see here in that frame is a little bit of a swirly bokeh here. I heard that comment from some people without telling them beforehand. So they had some similar impressions, obviously. and you can see a little bit the fall off towards the corners, but I would like to point out that the lens is sharp all the way to the edge of the frame. So not unlike an anamorphic shot for a wide screen
or vintage lenses.
Or vintage lenses, they don't have a sweet spot in the middle, so the focus goes all the way to the edges and to the bottom of the frame.
Yeah, depending on what you have in mind to shoot, this might be good. If you have a lot of movie with a lot of actors, musical or something like this, where you have dancers, 4 or 6 dancers next to each other, it's not so good to use anamorphic lenses, because then only the 2 in the middle are in the focus and the rest are in the vignetting field. Or if they stand in line, because the focus is curved on anamorphics, you won't get all of them into focus if they stand in line. So, yeah. Yeah, and this shot is also interesting. That's one of the shots where you see some kind of wallpaper effect because of the shallow depth of field. And I showed this to my assistant in Cologne as well, and she said that this shot was not quite her taste because there's a middle ground missing. It feels like they're standing in front of a photographic wallpaper, or somebody said last time virtual production.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is where it's always good to have a medium middle ground, or you have somebody walking by in front or in the back or something, or like on the wider shot where you can really see the focus fall off in the grass. How it gets less and less out of focus in the background. So if you have a background that is really far away, it's maybe not an advantage in close-up shots.
But if you don't like the amount of out of focus in the background and you want to avoid this wallpaper effect, of course, you can easily dial in an f-stop of 4 or 5.6. Yeah. It's about your liking, especially if we're talking about an outside shot like that.
And our tech friend Marco, he noticed on that shot that there is no chromatic aberration on these lenses. And that's really true, because usually you will have some kind of outline on a lot of
here,
at least vintage lenses, that there would be a purple or greenish outline along the
that purplish
branches.
area here is
that's the flare
from the lens flare from the sun. We were really trying, or Stefan was really trying hard to create lens flares.
What we've noticed is that if you're closer to objects, and that's now not even a really telephoto lens. If you're really close to an object, you lose this surprising effect of the shallow depth of field, because you think if you see that it's shot on a much longer lens, that's the only effect it has. It doesn't really, because I was really sitting very close to this duck. I was maybe to 1 meter, 1.20 meters or so away.
It was already the danger zone. The duck might have.
Yeah. And you wouldn't think that. So have in mind that I'm much further away with a longer lens, and it's not such a real difference to what we would shoot in a nature documentary. It would look similar.
But it doesn't produce that compression effect that you would have when you would shoot it with a let's say Super 35.
Yeah, you get a little bit of the feeling that these leaves in the foreground, that they are really close to the camera. That's the only thing you notice here. But on the wide shot, of course, it's a stronger effect again. Yeah.
Because I would like, that's one of my favorite shots, although. So you can see that duck is in focus and all the others are already getting out of focus. So for the narrative, this might be exactly what you are looking for, to separate people from a group.
Well, for a movie about a single duck. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah. There is another shot with Lucy later on. We will see Lucy in the pedestrian area. And we will talk about that.
And what's nice here is in the wide shot that you lose some definition in the buildings in the background, which are not too appealing. I always talk about Cologne, that it's not a beautiful city, but charming.
You told me it is. You told me you should go there because it's so beautiful.
It's charming, not beautiful.
No, you said beautiful.
Yeah, I did. What we tested here is just how the out of focus highlights behave.
You see the cat's eye bokeh towards the edges, which is
Of course, because
construction thing.
you get narrow to the edge of frame. And here, what you can compare here is how it looks on an f1.3, the background. And now we switch to a T-stop 4. And as you can see, there's a pretty huge difference in the background. If I do a quick comparison, here that's the 1.3, and that's the T-stop 4. This is about the depth of field you would get on Super 35 on the same f-stop 1.3. Maybe a little bit less focus, but as you can see, you can already read all the signs in the background here on an T-stop 4. And that might be distracting if you don't want to have too much of the city to present it in a shot. And also if you don't want to have the pedestrians' faces recognizable.
So next shot I like very much because I get this feeling of a wide-angle lens panning. So the space is moving a little bit, but there is no distortion. And we still have the separation of Yona here in this space. So we can separate him from the space.
Yeah. We've noticed, and that was something they've noticed in the Eterna tests, the Turkish and the two American DOPs, with the Eterna as well, that on this format the wide lenses don't appear that wide angle like on other formats, and we were wondering why. And you can see the wide angle effect here in the panning, because it's somehow sucking space in and out while you're panning. But it's not so, doesn't feel like a crazy wide angle in this position once you, as long as you don't move the camera. And I think the shallow depth of field is one thing, because you're used to have a very deep depth of field on the wide lens. The other could be that these lenses have no distortion on the edges. They are really, really clean, and really you still have straight lines on the edges. And most of the older lenses that are used for Super 35, they have distortion, because it was very hard to build high quality wide angles up to the 80s or so, or it was so expensive. And they focused on other things like a good f-stop or a nice look of the lens, and to keep them still affordable. Only I think ultra primes and master primes have edges like this. If you point ultra prime at something square, you see that everything up to the edge of frame is still straight. And this reduces the wide angle effect as well. And what could also be one thing that Marco pointed out was that in a wide angle, you're used to have the big things in the background turn small very fast. And this effect is stronger if they're in focus. If something is in the background and out of focus, you don't notice the size difference that much, because it's not so important in the frame. And that could be another factor. But definitely we had the feeling that this is because it's something about an 18 or something, the equivalent. We should have calculated this. The 32, okay, or 20, it could be a 20 or something.
24 something.
Which is even on Super 35 already a really crazy wide angle lens. Oh. Yeah, here it's really up to taste if you like the shot or not, because when my assistant in Cologne, she didn't like that much that the hand was so much out of focus. And that was not just because she likes a better f-stop for wrecking focus, but just because it might look artificial on the kind of matter, depends on the kind of movie you're shooting, that things that so close to the face are already that much out of focus. So this is a matter of taste, basically. Here you can see the slow focus transition, which works surprisingly nice on these lenses, I think. Also here, how the focus shifts over the wall.
So here for me, for the narrative, very interesting that we still feel the space. We will see another zoom in edit later where Stefan compares that to the other formats, and you see that you will completely lose your feeling for the space that she is standing in. And of course, like I said, sharpness all over until the edges. Yeah.
Yeah, that's actually my favorite shot of the whole test, because you have the point of interest is really in the right bottom corner, and the eyes are still quickly drawn to the part of the image because of the focus, the really focus on the person. And you still have this really crazy architecture and graphic background, and still it's not distracting. That's what I really like about it. And this could be really interesting for a really large projection. And I've noticed that in some cinemas here, they have even screens that are not only wide, but also tall. And that's would be nice for a square or for a 4:3 projection. And then this is when this format could get really interesting, that you don't need this would be a close-up on an IMAX movie. For example, if you want to shoot a close-up, that you don't get that close, but try to do it with a picture composition. Then the eye has something to discover in the frame. Yeah, we shot a lot on the 32. And this, you see there's hardly any distortion. When the camera is moving slightly, it's not like lines are bending in any way. And also here with this shot, the background is a really busy background. And on a wide shot like this, it's good because you can see all the details, but they're not distracting. So you have a feeling for the architecture in the background, but it's not like super tiny pieces which looks a little bit less digital, because if this would be more in focus, you would have much more tiny detail. And this is something also, if there's no grain and you don't add additional grain, sometimes this is distracting. If things that are really small are so much into detail, because that's something you should keep for the foreground and not for the background. If it's just a flat surface with a lot of detail, it's more, I find it more distracting. And even in a wide shot like this.
This is the only shot with noticeable flaring, I would say.
Yeah. Yeah, you really, with these lenses, to see flare, you need a dark foreground. Otherwise, you hardly get it. And I think the flares are still appealing. They're not, they don't look technical.
If you are familiar with the high-speed primes, for me it's a little bit comparable, the flaring characteristics. It has a little bit more of it. It's not as clean as the high-speed primes. Just has a little bit more of
touch of flare.
Character.
Of course, on that format, the flares get smaller because you zoom out of the picture. Also here you had this busy background of the cathedral, which is one of the few old buildings in Cologne. Yeah, this shot is also somehow
take a look
crazy.
at the couple here, how they get into and out of the focus.
Oh.
So again, for the narrative, that is a shot that you often see, that you want to isolate someone in a crowd, in a pedestrian zone, in an action movie where you follow someone. But normally you would have to use a very large telephoto lens to isolate someone like that. But here, my attention definitely is drawn to her. And you can see people walking in the focus plane and quickly getting out of it again. But you don't lose the sense of where you are. It's not a flat, compressed space that you are in, but you still feel the buildings and the other people around it, which I like very, very much for.
Yeah, you don't have the wallpaper effect here so strong, because people are moving towards the camera and you still see a little bit of focus fall off in the background. It's not just the same autofocus amount. But my assistant in Cologne, she also told me that she was on the edge of liking and disliking this image, because On the one hand, you can get really rid of the faces of the people in the background, so the attention is really drawn to the person in the foreground. On the other hand, if you look too long, watch the picture for too long, sometimes you miss the faces of the other people. You start to think of how they would look if they were in focus. So it's a tricky thing. It depends really on the look you want to create for a movie, if you like, or if it's doing something good or something bad. But you could criticize this image if you wanted to. So it's not a perfect for all occasions thing. So here. Yeah, really you catch a lot of light with a T-stop at 1.3.
So here you can, if you take a look at the car that is going to the left, I see a lot of this wide angle effect that I like, but I don't see distortion that is done by the lens. It is distortion done by the distance of the objects, but not by the lens construction as I see it.
Yeah, it doesn't
if there
feel
is
that
any
wide
person who's
angle
constructing
on the
lenses
first,
who wants to object or say something, I'm absolutely no.
Yeah, it's interesting because
Yeah.
if you look at the image on the first side, it doesn't feel that wide angle. It feels really regular. And it's only the cars moving in the background that are really give you that wide angle feeling. And what you can see here is that the crazy size of the autofocus lights in the background, it's really, they're much larger than they usually would be on this angle of view with a lens.
So of course you can already buy Lebkuchen in Germany. So I couldn't resist bringing the Christmas tree lights to see how the orbs, the bokeh would look like.
And they're really tiny lights. Yeah. It's only like the bulbs are that size, so they blow up to this size in a wide shot like this. That's really crazy.
Distance is roughly 4 to 5 meters here.
Yeah.
Very even. Of course, you get this cat's eyes towards the edge of the frames.
And you see, the only light we added here, for example, was just like this Christmas light lying there for this table. So we are on a very low light level. Yeah. And also the light from the police car. And the police car is really distant. It's not very close.
So about the cat eye bokeh, we tested it together with Marco, who just arrived. Thank you, Marco, for support. No, we need to know the digits you were calculating. Was it 13 millimeter with an
equivalent on
the equivalent
25.
With an f?
25.
The 25.
25 is 13.5 millimeter equivalent on Super 35 and an f 0.7 aperture.
Okay, thank you.
The same look as the 25 on.
So and yesterday we
demands a lot of drilling on the iris.
We tested the cat's eye characteristics. You will lose them if you don't like them. You will lose them at around an f-stop of 4. All over the range of the lenses. So I tested that. If you just stop down, they disappear in the corner.
Of course, then the reflections also get smaller. But I don't mind this cat's eye effect because it reminds me a little bit of anamorphic lenses. So I don't care. So what we could watch now as a final version of the test.
As long as Stefan is clicking on the next clip, are there any questions or remarks now? Yeah, there is one.
Yeah, I have one rookie question, because I believe that, and I don't know if it's true, but the sensor itself doesn't change depth of field, right? It only changes the crop. I mean, if you put let's say 25mm lens on Super 35 and on this large sensor, and you put the same T-stop or f-stop, the depth of field would be the same, but the point of the field of view. Field of view would be bigger.
You
Exactly.
have a wider lens
Yeah.
on the same. Yeah.
Yeah.
That was compared to the same angle of view, so to say, not on the same lens. Yeah. So if you take
And also, I wanted to ask, do you see any disadvantages of using such a big sensor?
Yeah, I have to say there is one big disadvantage for assistance. So that is a point I would like to make. I don't think that using a large sensor is for getting 2 more hairs in the face out of focus with a longer focal length. So you're going to drive everyone on set crazy with doing like 20 takes until you reach the focusing. So I think the really interesting point, and that is what we are trying to show you here, is it's the wide-angle lenses that can help you for your narrative story. It's not about, with a larger sensor, of course, you get a more shallow depth of field, but for me, that is not the point of the narrative here. You get less depth of field, you get more flat surfaces in the background. Out of focus areas have the tendency to get this wallpaper effect and all of that. But that's not to my liking, at least. Maybe there is a narrative that calls for that. But for me, the appealing point is to use wide-angle lenses on a large sensor to get some kind of a separation that you are not able to get on a, let's say, a Super 35 millimeter sensor.
I mean, I think large sensors are really good for large screens. So it's not something you should necessarily use for television. It's really for a big projection. Also, you can shoot widescreen with a sensor like this. If you just crop the image, then you can shoot widescreen spherical, which might be for some reasons also interesting, especially if you shoot musicals or scenes with a lot of actors standing in the same plane. And also, still, Super 35 has its advantages. There's a huge selection of lenses and vintage lenses available. For this format, you can count, I think, on one hand how many lens sets there are available. And also, there are a lot of old medium format lenses that would cover the sensor completely, but a lot of them are really crapping for movie shooting, because I own an old Zeiss medium format lens set, and they flare like shit, because they flare everywhere. You point a light into them, it all gets gray in 1 second. And this is also why they didn't use them for the medium format ARRI lenses. They didn't use the East German glass, which is really great in a lot of senses, but not in flaring. It looks horrible. So you really have to, you can't use it for movie shooting.
Yeah.
Only in very controlled situations. Yeah.
And to emphasize, it gives you another option, because sometimes you're in limited spaces and you cannot really go back, right?
Mm-hmm.
But you're still capable of producing such a wide shot, even if now there would be a wall directly behind you, right? So
Yeah.
this in limited spaces, just another option.
Yeah,
Yeah, like on your space movie, Ole, it's if you have a very confined space and you want to stay wide angle, this could also be an option to get the background out of focus.
to point out here, what do you guess? What is the distance between camera and our subjects here? Any idea?
We should have measured it.
I know it. I know it.
You know
So,
it, you
yeah,
did?
yeah.
Oh, okay.
I would like to. I would like to point out that the marking that you sometimes see here in the foreground is 3 meters away from the
Yeah.
camera. So it's
Yeah,
not
it's
that
close.
far. Yeah. So where is it? There's the mark.
Yeah, this
Yeah,
is,
you have to comment on that.
yeah, this is how it would look in Super 35. So that's cropped to the format. You see there's a huge difference to Super 35. And also quite a difference to full frame. Yeah, and this is funny. This is just for reference, because we are at the end of the camera resolution. This would be a Super 16, and this, keep in mind, this was how most of the TV shows in Europe looked for 20 or 30 years. That's the depth of field you had there. You had to go this close to get the same depth of field.
So here, take a look how you lose your sense of the space that Lucy is in.
Yeah.
So I would say here, it's basically gone.
Yeah.
So you don't have the arch anymore. You don't feel that you're underneath that.
Not such a graphic background. And this is a completely nice close-up shot. But I think the shot in the middle here, on full frame with the same lens, same distance, it looks more like a mishap in framing, like than the other shot where you still see the arc of the gate. So you lose something. So I guess what I think was the advantages of such a large sensor with such an open T-stop lens is that you get more space around your close-up. And I'm not thinking about getting less autofocus stuff in the background. It's more like you have something around the close-up that you won't get on other formats. Or also with the Cologne Cathedral, it's always a problem for tourists to get the whole towers into the frame. So it's also an option for tall buildings. What you can notice here is, of course, that the flare gets larger on the smaller formats, of course, because you sort of zoom into the flare. Yeah, the funny thing here is a 25 is still a wide-angle lens on a super 35mm format, and yeah, you get just a portion at that distance, only a portion of the cathedral in frame, even with a wide-angle lens on super 35. In the beginning, we also had the tips of the towers, so. Yeah, and what you can see is that these lenses hold up pretty nice in all formats. So even on Super 35, they look pleasing. So it's really the camera and the lenses can be used in any of the three formats without any compromises, which is also nice. Even if you overshoot the Aizus with the ultra large sensor. But it's
and the Eterna gives you the option. I would like to point that out. So the Eterna will give you the option to use your old glass and a longer focal length on a smaller sensor size, and do what I would like to do with it, to use it for the wide angle shots, for the wide shots, with the open gate, or with a really open wide readout of the sensor, and then maybe for the lenses you prefer for something for another narrative or for another special style, you can still crop into the sensor very easily.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Before we finish, I would like to show you some images of a classic still photographer, Vivian Meyer. I'm not sure if you're familiar with her work. She shot street photography in the 50s and 60s, mostly in New York and in other big cities in the USA. And all her negatives were just discovered after she died in a garage sale. So that's also very interesting. And she shot 10,000s of pictures, and always on medium format, on a medium format Rolleiflex camera in square format. And I think what's really interesting is her framing is sometimes it's really an off framing where you have a lot of headroom, which is unusual for a widescreen format. but for a square format or close to a square format, it's a really nice framing. And you really get all the emphasis on the character in the foreground, and you still have all the architecture and the graphic of the architecture in the background. And also here, because of the large format, not so much because of the f-stop, it's autofocus already. So you can compare this depth of field to what we've shot, because she may have shot this on a 2.8 or something, but because the image sensor is larger, it's about the same depth of field we have here. And it's also interesting to look what this shot would look at as a widescreen version, and it's a completely different kind of story you have here, and a completely different kind of aesthetics.
So maybe for all the younger people in the room right now, this could be the newest, latest hype. So maybe go for a square format and do stuff like that.
If you've got a square screen, you don't need to crop too much on the screen. It's not.
But it's not too hard on a cell phone to.
Also, this is basically, from the way of thinking, this is a close-up shot of a character, and it's not and still it's a wide framing. So you have all the other stuff out of focus. I could watch these images for hours. And it's not always that she always had this played around with the depth of field. And also here you have all the whole surrounding is also in frame, but not in focus. Yeah, also here it's a really the arrange how the things are rearranged in the picture. They are really, it could be distracting if everything would be in focus. It's just like the kid is in focus and not the rest of the people. And also with reflections, the same thing is you can really, with a shallow depth of field, you can separate the person from the reflection and still have the reflection in the image. Because if you really would have the reflection as well that much in focus, it might be distracting, or at least all the reflections.
Yeah, so camera is booting up, and I would like to show
finished.
you. I would like to show you in this real-world situation that we are all in right now, how this 25 looks like. Maybe we can raise the light level just a tiny little bit for this experiment.
We have to reboot again.
Yippee!
We had the problem yesterday.
Wait, give it a second.
No, this camera doesn't like if the video is unplugged. Plugged in again. Yeah, it's all up. Good thing is it's booting very fast, so you don't need to grab a coffee.
So when the Fuji guys were here, I couldn't reproduce it, but now again. Okay.
Meanwhile, one question. Why is medium format larger than large format?
Because of the tradition of the naming of the still and video formats. Because still formats were the large format, and still format was 9x12 or even larger, that was like this. And so the 6x6 was, and the what now is regular for most of the cameras, was for still photography was the small format, was 35, and medium was in between, which was usually 6x6, or even also there was a smaller medium format 4x4. And nowadays the naming of the videographic sensor starts basically with the Super 35 as the standard format, and then you have large format, then is the, or LF is the sensor that size that was regular small on still photography. So basically what's large format for video is small for still.
So, and I would like to give you another hint. So photography, due to better grain, was getting smaller and smaller due to economics, until we ended up with having those 24x36, 6 millimeter. The digital video, it just went up due to the production costs of the sensor sizes. They started with the 2/3 of an inch sensor, and now nowadays we're up to that larger, ultra large format sensors that the Eterna is producing. So you can see this is the real life situation. I can focus back on the bar and you can see the foreground is already out of focus, or focus on the first row here. You can see the background is out of focus, and that is, like I said, a 25. No lens distortion when I pan, what I like very much. Oh, what is that coming from? That's the, didn't have that yesterday. Well, now it's gone.
Coming from that?
No, it's just that one here.
This one. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, so that is something, yeah, I said it many times. I like it very much. If you take a look at the sharpness at the edges, you are still in focus here, although this is already overshooting the lens itself. So basically, I think the lens from the technical data goes up to somewhere here. Mm-hmm. So still, it's very, very sharp to the edges of the frame. The darker corners, in my opinion, and I try to show the tendency with the Poor Things Optex 4mm. There's more shots like that. So we always, as cinematographers, we always go for what I like to call, in pharmaceuticals, it is called off-label use, and that's where the fun starts. So we always take the stuff, the gear we use, to the extreme to create some kind of a special look that you cannot achieve if you're using your medicamentation all the way that the prescription says.
Now so, with the Eterna, the dark edges are a little bit more prominent because we were shooting more in this area. So we have now a 4:3 aspect ratio. But still, if you shoot square, of course, you don't have any problems with the edges. And also, if you shoot widescreen 235, also there you have no problems even shooting out of the regular image circle of the lenses. So for widescreen, it's no problem. And even I think IMAX aspect ratio of the IMAX screens would be something like this. So still you would have a little bit less of the black edges. And I guess in an IMAX screen, if you see it in the middle in one of the front rows, we won't be able to see the edges anyway, because you would have to turn your head around quite a bit. So yeah. Oh, we've lost the signal.
Yeah, I was trying to put out the framing guidelines, but of course, under pressure, I'm not able to do it.
Yeah, I think we can imagine that. Yeah.
Okay. So
yeah, now we're already past lunchtime, I think.
That was it.
And yeah, if you have any questions, it's time for them now. Come.
Is the Eterna the only camera that offers such a kind of intermediate format?
In that tallness of the sensor, yes, it's the tallest sensor. It's not the widest. The Alexa 65 and the Blackmagic 17K have both a little bit wider sensor, but only in a widescreen aspect ratio. So if you want to shoot square or 4:3 or something, this is the way to go, because it's the closest to medium format you could choose. Yeah.
Actually, even 16:9, the sensor size you're using here, 16:9 is bigger than the Alexa 65.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
Because just 16:9 is higher. The Alexa 65 is only as high as a mini LF.
Yeah.
So even in 16:9, you have more actual surface, image surface.
No. Which is really amazing for that price. Not that I'm advertising the camera, but that's really crazy. And also you can shoot all the other formats, LF and Super 35, but only in 4:2:2.
External RAW is possible.
Or external RAW, yeah, right.
Yeah, for me, I think it was really interesting that you showed also this Vivian Maier photos, and I think there's a big difference. The photo and the focus in a photo is really important, especially when you have New York or whatever. And I was asking myself when I saw the pictures which you're testing, which kind of emotion do I get? I get the emotion that this person there who's looking around, she's in a really it seems to be a very personal thing or depressive or whatever. So I think when I think in a narrative way, I think when I would do that through the whole film, that would be very interesting, yeah. Or also dangerous.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
I think, and so I think we have to watch out because it's sure we try that what we can, and we love shallow depth of focus, right? We love that, and that's what we aim for all the time. But it's getting, I think it's getting dangerous because when as the audience, I would love to see a little bit more, and when the concentration is just on that person. It's getting.
You could use that also as an effect in certain parts of a movie, of course. You don't need to do it all the way. And as I said, I think it's better for really large screens than for a smartphone or a tablet to watch on. Then it might be really more distracting because then you have, the image you see is only on the screen is only a part of your whole vision. And in a widescreen or IMAX theater, you have a really the image is much larger than your own field of vision, and you have a completely different impression of the image. So that might be it. And also, this is not for fast editing. This approach of photography, it's not doesn't work like this. It's more like looking at a still picture. So it's for shot that lasts like a minute or maybe 10 seconds. It's already long today because usually. I think we have up to 1,800 edits per 90-minute movie today in an average, or 1,500. That's less than 4 seconds in one shot, or around 3 seconds. That doesn't work because then you have only seen the out of focus part of the picture in 3 seconds when it's in the middle. And but there have been directors who did really nice movies with a few edits, like Tarkovsky or so. That would have been nice. Maybe he used also deep focus sometimes. But if you would really want to have a emphasis on people in a landscape shot, it's possible if you like to.
Yeah.
And you can afford it. It's not like you have to rent an IMAX camera for this. No. Okay, more questions. Good. We are still open for questions after we've wrapped up here. And thank you very much for listening.
And if you want to check on the lenses or the camera, of course, I'm happy to help, and we can even change focal length lenses. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.